Hi there, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Today's story isn't about rage or revenge. It's about what happens when someone laughs at your value and ends up needing the very things they mocked. So, let me tell you what happened, and I won't start with how we met. That doesn't matter anymore. It started with an empty gas tank. Not metaphorically. I mean my actual car. I was sitting in a Walmart parking lot at 11:46 p.m., engine sputtering, card declined twice, and the only thing in my glove box was a mint from a dentist visit I didn't even go to. And that's when the message came in. From Leslie. Lowell, I need help. He can't cover the rent this month. Please don't make this harder. No, hi. No, how are you? No mention of the fact she'd left me 3 months earlier for a guy with washboard abs and a Vespa. Just help. Because her shiny new life suddenly ran out of gas, too. You want to know what makes this worse? This whole mess. It started with a joke. It was a backyard party. Her co-workers, not mine. I was the awkward +1 sipping warm sangria and trying not to trigger my seasonal allergies. Leslie? She was glowing. Bright red dress. High heels she always said were only for special. And then someone asked us, "What's your secret? 9 years and still going strong?" She didn't miss a beat. Oh, please. If I had a choice, I'd choose someone else. Laughter. Glasses clinking. Me? I just smiled like a malfunctioning robot. Because I'd heard her say things like that before, but never out loud. Not to strangers. Not while holding my hand. The worst part? Everyone agreed. Ha! Same. My husband too. Don't we all, girl? Except I didn't feel like laughing. I felt like furniture. One of those chairs people lean on, spill drinks on, forget about until it breaks. And even then, they blame the chair. After that night, something changed. Or maybe, I just started noticing what had been there all along. She came home less, left earlier, spent more time at her friend's place who I had never met, never seen. Never heard her mention until suddenly this friend had an apartment with rooftop views and 2 dogs who don't like visitors. I asked questions. Got smiles instead of answers. I offered to talk. Got sighs. I cooked dinner. She took photos of it but barely ate. I said, "I love you." She said, "Thanks." And then one Sunday morning, while I was trying to fix the leaking kitchen faucet using a YouTube video and way too much duct tape, she walked in and said, "I'm going to stay at his place for a while. He gets me." She packed her suitcase while humming. 3 months. That's how long it's been since she left. 3 months of silence, canceled subscriptions, awkward conversations with her mother who pretends nothing happened, and one very strange voicemail from a guy named Bo, asking if I still had the espresso machine manual. Then last week, the message. Help! Because apparently the man she chose can't even pay the bills. And you know what? That's not even the twist. That's just the intro. Because after I got that message, I did something I swore I never would. I went looking, and what I found, it rewired everything I thought I knew about why she left. I didn't answer her message right away. I sat in the car that night, phone glowing on the passenger seat like it was taunting me. It was the first time she'd contacted me since she left. No calls, no apologies. Not even to pick up the sweater she claimed was vintage Parisian, though I later found the same one on clearance at Target. But now, because Mr. Dream Guy couldn't cover their bills, she needed me. Me, the boring accountant she laughed at in front of strangers. The man she wouldn't choose if given the option. The guy who knew how to manage a spreadsheet but apparently not a wife's expectations. I didn't respond. Not that night. Instead, I opened my browser and typed his name. The one she left me for. Trent Holloway. I only knew it because she slipped once, murmuring it in her sleep about a month before she moved out. I pretended I didn't hear it, but I wrote it down on the Notes app. Because that's the kind of man I am. The kind who suffers quietly, stores pain in folders, and stares at it until it turns into data. It wasn't hard to find him. These guys always want to be found. Instagram full of gym selfies, shirtless mirror shots, and captions like, "Hustle while they sleep," or "CEO of my own destiny." In every photo, he looked like he'd just finished doing push-ups on the roof of a sports car. Flashy watches, designer belts, muscles sculpted by either devotion or delusion. And there she was too, Leslie, front and center, laughing on a rooftop, clinking champagne glasses with her new choice, wearing the earrings I gave her on our 5th anniversary. The caption read, "Some people settle, others evolve." I stared at that post until my screen dimmed. The next morning, I did something I never imagined myself doing. I called the number she messaged me from. She picked up on the first ring. No hello, just silence. I waited for her to say something. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller than I remembered, like a version of her that didn't fit the woman in those rooftop photos. "Lowell," she said. I didn't know who else to ask. I didn't say much, just listened. Turns out Trent's big startup dreams had dried up. The crypto investments failed. The investor he was counting on ghosted him. Rent was overdue, utilities were piling up, and he was now driving Uber in a borrowed Prius while telling everyone he was between rounds of funding. And her? She was stuck in a one-bedroom downtown loft with a mattress on the floor and no air conditioning. But she still wouldn't admit she was wrong. She still framed it like it was just a rough patch, as if she hadn't detonated our life together on a whim. "I'm not asking for much," she said. "Just help with the rent this month. Trent's trying, but things are tight." That was the moment everything inside me shifted. Not because I felt vindicated, but because she still saw me as the safety net. The man she could laugh at publicly and lean on privately. The guy she wouldn't choose unless she needed saving. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. I just said, "I'll think about it." Then I hung up and did what she probably never expected. I drove to their place. I needed to see it for myself. I needed proof that the version of her I was grieving didn't exist anymore. And when I pulled up to that overpriced, glass-walled apartment, I saw Trent outside, pacing, phone to his ear, clearly arguing with someone. He was barefoot, no shirt, his sweatpants sagging. He looked less like a CEO and more like someone who'd been kicked out of a spin class. And Leslie? She was sitting inside by the window, staring at her phone like she was waiting for a miracle. When she looked up and saw me parked across the street, she didn't wave. She didn't come out. She looked away. That hurt more than I expected. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't go up. I just watched. And then I did something petty, small, something uncharacteristic. I took a photo of Trent standing outside with his phone, looking absolutely defeated. I didn't send it to her. I just kept it. A reminder. Because next time she says she had a choice, I'll remember who she chose, and what he couldn't even afford. 2 days after that parking lot moment, the one where I saw her through the glass and felt something permanently collapse inside me, I went back to work like nothing had happened. Because that's what people like me do. We pack up heartbreak in Tupperware, stick it in the fridge next to last week's regrets, and show up on time, holding coffee we don't even remember buying. I work in a finance office. Beige carpets, flickering overhead lights, a break room that smells faintly of sadness and microwaved fish. It's not glamorous, but it's predictable. Something Leslie always said she hated. "I feel like I'm living the same day over and over," she once told me. Back then, I thought that was just post-vacation blues. Now I realize it was her test balloon, floating the idea of leaving long before she packed that first suitcase. But something happened that Tuesday that knocked the breath out of me more than her leaving ever did. Around 3:40 p.m., right before our weekly budget review, my coworker James walked in holding a small padded envelope. "Package for you," he said. "No return address." Now, I don't get mail at work. Never have. And no one I know even knows this address, outside of HR. The envelope was light. No name on the front. Just my first name, handwritten. Lowell. That alone sent a chill through me. The last time someone called me by name and meant it, it was my landlord asking if I'd seen a raccoon on the fire escape. I opened the envelope. Inside was a USB stick. No note. No label. Just a plain silver drive. Now, any other day I would have tossed it or turned it into IT. But something in my gut, some awful, gnawing curiosity, made me plug it into my laptop. The folder had only one file, a video, Timestamped 2 weeks before Leslie left. I clicked play, and I wish I hadn't. It was recorded on a phone, handheld, slightly shaky. I could tell right away it was Leslie's voice, even before the camera panned to her face. She was on a balcony somewhere, wearing a dress I didn't recognize, drink in hand, talking to someone off-screen. Her tone was relaxed, casual, like she was explaining her weekend plans. I know it sounds harsh, but I just can't do that life anymore. Lowell's sweet, but I feel like I'm babysitting a calculator. He still shops with coupons, for God's sake. Trent, he's wild. He makes me feel like I exist. Then she laughed. Laughed so effortlessly that I felt like someone had poured acid down the back of my throat. I told him once, half joking, if I had a choice, I'd choose someone else. And the poor guy just laughed with me. He thought I was being funny. But I wasn't. I really would choose someone else. And now I did. Then, a voice I didn't recognize, male, arrogant, responded off camera. And you'll never go back? Leslie smirked at the camera and clinked her glass against his. Why would I? That man wouldn't last a week without me. The clip ended there. I sat frozen for a long time. Then I did something stupid. I watched it again. And again. Each time, I caught something new. The way her smile lingered when she said, someone else. The confident way she spoke about me like I was just a side character in her personal movie. But most of all, it was that last sentence that echoed, that man wouldn't last a week without me. Funny thing is, I did last a week. I lasted many. I survived the silence, the empty bed, the cold coffee in the morning. I paid the bills. I kept the lights on. I fixed the leaky faucet she never could. And now she was asking me for help, because the guy she chose couldn't carry what I held up for years. I don't know who sent the USB. I still don't. I have theories. Maybe one of Trent's friends who got tired of hearing about how he stole someone's wife. Maybe someone from her old job who didn't like how she left me hanging. Or maybe it was her. Maybe she wanted me to see it, to burn it all down completely. But here's the part that's going to sound strange. I wasn't angry. I was free. Because that was the moment I stopped wondering what I did wrong. It wasn't about me being boring or careful or steady. It was about her needing chaos and confusing that with passion. She thought I wouldn't last without her. But now, I'm not just surviving. I'm about to make a move that'll prove she misjudged the one person she thought she knew. And no, it's not revenge. It's something better. After watching that video for the 5th time, I closed my laptop, stood up from my desk, and went to the office bathroom. Not to cry, but to look at myself in the mirror. And not for some poetic moment of reflection either. I just genuinely didn't recognize the person I saw anymore. My hair had grown unevenly since I stopped going to the barber we used to visit together. My shirt collar was stained with coffee. I had this exhausted, sunken look around my eyes like I hadn't slept in months, which wasn't entirely untrue. There was no glow, no energy, just maintenance. I wasn't living. I was being kept alive by routine and bitter resolve. And the irony? She thought I was too safe, too plain. But what she never realized was that I had learned to be still because I had to hold up the parts of our life that were constantly shaking. I was her anchor. She just saw it as dead weight. That night, something in me cracked open. Not snapped, nothing that dramatic. It was more like the sound a tight jar makes when it finally gives. I went home, made some lukewarm ramen, and sat on the floor of our apartment with the lights off. The silence was oppressive. There's a kind of stillness that stops being peaceful and starts feeling like punishment, like the walls are daring you to make a sound. I thought about deleting the video. I hovered over the file, but I didn't. Not because I wanted to watch it again, but because I needed to remember. I needed to stop protecting her memory like it was some sacred thing. The next morning, I made a call. Not to her. Not to Trent. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My sister, Elise. We'd grown apart for reasons too complicated to explain here, but she was the only person who had ever truly seen through Leslie's charm. She answered after one ring, and when I told her what had happened, she didn't say, "I told you so." She just said, "You want to get away?" That's how, 2 days later, I found myself in the passenger seat of Elisa's beat-up Jeep, heading toward a cabin she was renting in upstate New York for her freelance writing retreat. It was isolated, surrounded by pines, and the air smelled like wet earth and distant thunder. She handed me a bag of trail mix and a blanket and said, "No internet out here, just firewood and brutal honesty." I needed both. On the second night, we sat outside with mugs of something warm, and Elise finally asked, "Why are you still letting her take up space in your head?" I didn't have a good answer, so I told her about the USB, about the rent text, about how Trent, Mr. Shirtless Startup, couldn't even afford half a month of living expenses without asking me, the boring husband, for help. She stared at me for a long time and then said something I won't forget. She thought she upgraded, but turns out she was just trading a foundation for a filter. That line echoed for the rest of the night. But it wasn't until the third day at the cabin that the story really took a turn. Elise had gone into town to get groceries, and I stayed behind, sipping stale instant coffee and scrolling through old photos on my laptop. I wasn't looking for pain. I was looking for proof that the love I remembered wasn't something I'd fabricated in my head. And that's when I found it. A hidden folder. One Leslie never knew I had access to. It was named something boring like Marketing Backup 2019, but inside were screenshots, messages, and notes from long before she left. Conversations she'd had with someone saved only as R. One of the messages dated back 2 years before our split. "He doesn't even notice when I disappear. I swear I could leave for a week and he'd still be asking me what we want for dinner. I'm just waiting for the right moment." The right moment. She'd been planning to leave long before she made that joke at the barbecue. Long before Trent entered the picture. I wasn't traded for someone better. I was discarded the moment she decided my loyalty was a limitation. I wanted to throw my laptop across the room. I wanted to scream into the pines until the trees bent from the weight of my fury. But instead, I laughed. I laughed because the person who told me I wouldn't survive without her had been building an escape plan behind my back for 2 entire years, only to end up with a man who couldn't even split rent. The best part? She thought I still wanted her. She thought I'd help her. That's when I knew what I had to do next. When I left the cabin and returned to the city, it felt like I had walked back into the aftermath of a storm I didn't see hit. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. The streets still hummed with distant sirens. The crosswalks still blinked in rhythm, and the neighborhood dogs still barked at delivery trucks like they were defending kingdoms. But I wasn't the same man who sat quietly on the couch hoping his wife would come home early. I wasn't the same guy who made color-coded grocery lists and apologized for things he didn't do. Something inside me had cooled, hardened, not with anger, with clarity. I didn't respond to her rent message. Not even a no. I wanted silence to say everything I couldn't. But of course, she didn't let it end there. 3 days after I got back, I received another text. This time it was longer. "Lowell, I know you're hurt. I never wanted to cause you pain. Things just got complicated. Trent is going through some things right now, and I didn't expect you to cover anything. I just thought, maybe you'd understand." Understand? I stared at those words like they were a foreign language. Understand what exactly? That she left without warning? That she humiliated me publicly and privately? That she treated my loyalty like a flaw and used my stability as a stepping stone to chaos? She followed up with, "Can we talk, just once? Please. I think we both deserve some closure." Closure. Isn't that the prettiest word people use when they want to rewrite history? Still, I agreed. Not because I needed answers, I had more than enough by now. But because part of me wanted to see what version of herself she'd bring to the table. The empowered woman who laughed at my existence, or the one who was now begging for help from the man she said she'd never choose. We met at a coffee shop we used to visit on Sundays. I arrived early, not because I was excited, but because I wanted to watch her walk in. I needed to see if I could read it on her face. Regret, guilt, desperation. Something human. She was 15 minutes late. When she entered, she looked different. Not dramatically, but the effortless glow she used to carry had dulled. The makeup didn't hide the tired under eyes. The designer purse looked worn. She smiled like nothing had happened, like we were old friends meeting to catch up. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You look good." I didn't respond to that. I didn't need small talk. I wanted to hear her say the real thing. But of course, she didn't start there. She talked in circles for 10 minutes. About her job being unstable, how Trent was going through things emotionally, how the rent shot up unexpectedly, how adulting is just hard lately. As if we were still 22 and learning to pay electric bills. Then she said it, the moment she'd clearly rehearsed. "I'm not saying I regret everything, Lowell. I'm just saying, I didn't expect you to disappear like that. I thought you loved me more than that." That line. That line. I leaned forward slowly and asked one question. "Do you remember saying that I wouldn't last a week without you?" She blinked, tilted her head. "What?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. Opened the video file. Pressed play. She froze. Her smile faded. Her jaw clenched. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't have a performance ready. I didn't watch her watch it. I watched the reflection in my coffee. I wanted to give her the privacy of shame. When it ended, I tapped the screen off. "I did last, Leslie," I said. "And not just 1 week. I lasted through the silence. Through the self-loathing. Through the fact that I still blamed myself for your boredom. And now I'm doing something I haven't done in years. I'm drawing the line." She swallowed hard, hands in her lap. "I was scared," she whispered. "You made everything feel so fixed, so permanent. And I didn't know if that was a good thing or a trap." I let that hang in the air, because in her eyes, safety and suffocation looked the same. And I couldn't change that for her anymore. Then I stood up, took a breath, looked down at the woman I once would have done anything for. "I'm not going to pay your rent, but here, I do have something for you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside, a copy of her own words, transcribed from the video. "That man wouldn't last a week without me." Written below in my handwriting were just 3 words. "You were wrong." I walked out before she could respond. The door closed behind me, and with it, a decade of weight slid off my back like it never belonged there. I thought that would be the last of it. After that coffee shop moment, the final unmasking, the parting words, the envelope with her own arrogance folded neatly inside. I truly believed it was over. Not just the relationship, but the story. The humiliation had peaked. The begging had been denied. The chapter had closed. And I was fine with that. I needed it to be over so I could begin something new, even if that something was just learning to exist without bitterness choking every breath. But life doesn't honor clean endings. Not for people like me. For people like her? Sure, they thrive in the chaos. They slip out of consequence like it's a jacket they forgot they were wearing. But for people like me, the ones who stay until the lights flicker and the dishes are done and the bills are paid, the mess always finds a way to circle back. And this time it came in the form of a phone call. Not from her, but from her mother. I hadn't spoken to Grace since the wedding. She was polite, always kind to me, but distant in the way that said, "You're good enough for now." So hearing her voice on the other end of the line was not just surprising. It was deeply unsettling. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I'm sorry to call like this," she said, "but I think you should know what's happening." I was silent. Every instinct told me to hang up, to disengage, to refuse to get sucked back into a life I had finally peeled off. But she kept talking. "Leslie's been staying here for over a week now. She hasn't told you?" I nearly laughed. No, she hadn't. Of course not. Why would she? She wanted me to think she was thriving, powerful, unapologetic. The kind of woman who didn't need a fallback. But there she was, back in the bedroom she probably decorated in high school, back to where everything was pink and polished and full of plans that had no real roots. "She's not doing well, Lowell," Grace continued. "And I know you have no obligation to care, but she's unraveling." That word, unraveling, it hung in the air like an echo, a poetic kind of justice, because that's exactly what it felt like on my end when she left. Like someone had pulled a single thread from my life and kept pulling until the whole thing fell apart. "I appreciate you telling me," I said, but with respect. I'm not the one who can fix that anymore. I expected that to be the end of the call. But then she said something that knocked the wind out of me. She lied to him, to Trent. She told him you were abusive, that you were obsessive, that you stalked her after the breakup and threatened to ruin her life. I sat down slowly, my fingers trembling. What? She wanted to justify leaving you for him, wanted him to see her as this damsel escaping a nightmare. It was all part of her fantasy. And now that it's crumbling, she doesn't know who she is without it. I was stunned, not because I believed her, but because I didn't want to believe her. Because despite everything, some naive part of me still wanted to think she left because of a spark, because of lust or confusion or some buried incompatibility. But to learn that she rewrote the story entirely, that she painted me as a villain to feel justified, it burned more than any betrayal before it. I don't know what she's planning next, Grace said, her voice softer now, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. She hung up before I could ask what that meant. Over the next 2 days, I waited for the fallout. It came in the form of a screenshot. A mutual friend, someone I hadn't spoken to since the wedding, sent me a text. No greeting, just an image. It was a post from Leslie's private Instagram account. A long-winded caption about healing from toxic men, surviving psychological abuse, and finding safety in truth. She didn't name me, but it was about me. She mentioned things that only we shared. Places, conversations, habits. All twisted into a narrative that made her look like a phoenix rising and me like the wildfire that tried to consume her. I felt sick. Not because anyone would believe it. Most of our circles had drifted, and the ones who knew me knew better. But because she was still trying to control the story. Even now. Even after everything. And then, a comment under the post caught my eye. From Trent. You never deserved that. Proud of you for standing strong. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about damage control. She was trying to reignite something. Maybe to save face. Maybe because she wanted to be needed again. Or maybe because watching Trent collapse under the weight of actual responsibility made her nostalgic for the man she once ridiculed for being dependable. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't defend myself. I let the lie sit in the open air where its own stench would expose it. But I did make one quiet move. I reached out to my lawyer. Not because I wanted to sue her. Not because I needed money or revenge. But because if she ever tried to drag me into a public mess with her delusions, I wanted my side of the story to be airtight. Truth documented. Facts archived. No more hoping people would know my heart. I was done being soft in the face of slander. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Not anymore. That phase was long gone. But because I was calculating something deeper, not numbers like I used to, but silence. The weight of it. The damage it does when it's weaponized. You see, some people scream to hurt you. Others smile. Leslie did both. But the worst, the absolute worst, was how she used quiet moments like they were scalpels, slicing through my reputation with implication, soft accusations, and half-told stories made to cast herself as the survivor of something she created. After the Instagram post, I didn't respond. I didn't beg. I didn't defend. I let the lie sit because in the age of social media, liars always post too much. And eventually, if you let them keep talking, they expose themselves. But I also knew that wasn't the end. I could feel it. So when the email came the next morning, I wasn't surprised. I just wasn't prepared for what it said. It was from an anonymous Gmail account. No name. No subject line. Just a single attachment. I stared at the file for almost an hour before I opened it. Something in me, a voice I hadn't trusted in years, told me to wait. But I didn't. And the moment I did, my hands went ice cold. It was a scanned letter. A handwritten confession. Pages of it. The writing was unmistakably hers. Leslie's signature swirls on every Y. That dramatic underline under her name like it was always meant to be printed in headlines. But the content, it wasn't just shocking. It was nuclear. In the letter, she admitted everything. The cheating, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the smear campaign. Even the lie she told Trent about me being dangerous. It was like she had spilled every ugly secret she tried to bury. But instead of remorse, it read like she was trying to convince herself she was the real victim in the chaos she engineered. She wrote, "I didn't mean to destroy him, but I needed to be free, and freedom doesn't come without mess." And this, Trent was never what I thought he'd be. He's not Lowell. He never was. But I can't go back. Not after all this. It was like reading the diary of someone who had staged their own emotional house fire and then wondered why they couldn't move back in. I was still trying to understand why I received it when the second email came in. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from Trent. And the subject line? "We need to talk." Now, I didn't owe that man a single breath. Not after what he knowingly participated in. But curiosity is cruel. And so is ego. I needed to know what he thought he had to say to me, and what exactly had driven him to suddenly open that door. So I met him. We met in a bookstore cafe of all places. The irony was thick. The same kind of quiet space Leslie used to beg me to visit while she browsed magazines she never bought. When I arrived, Trent was already there. He looked broken. Not in a melodramatic way, but in that hollowed-out, post-reckoning kind of way. The kind of look I'd worn for months after she left me. He stood up when I arrived. No handshake. No smirk. Just a tight nod and a whisper of "thanks for coming." I didn't respond. Just sat down. He wasted no time. "I read it," he said, sliding his phone across the table. "The letter. She left it in our apartment. I don't think she meant to, or maybe she did. I don't know anymore." I skimmed the screen. It was the same document. Word for word. But unlike me, he had no context. No history. He didn't live through the slow erosion of identity that Leslie inflicted. For him, it all hit at once. "She told me you were obsessive," he added, not meeting my eyes. "Said you followed her, showed up at her job, threatened her." I believed her. Of course he did. That was her gift. Trent took a deep breath. I was never enough for her. Not emotionally. Not financially. Not even physically, I think. He looked embarrassed admitting that last part. Like he'd been holding on to that pain far longer than he wanted to admit. "She used us both," I said, not with bitterness, but with clarity. "For different reasons." He nodded. "I know. I see it now." I didn't expect what came next. He reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope. "It's everything," he said. "Texts, photos, screenshots. From the last year. Every lie, every manipulation. I figured, you might want it in case she tries to drag your name through the dirt again." I took it, but not for revenge. I took it because for once, someone else was finally holding the weight she left on me. And not just holding it, offering to carry it. As I walked out of that bookstore, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even relieved. I was simply done. Done waiting for apologies. Done hoping for understanding. Done trying to make sense of a person who lived like the truth was optional. It's strange how peace doesn't come in the form of justice or revenge or even vindication. It comes quietly, like warm sunlight through a window you forgot was open. After that last meeting with Trent, I didn't follow up with Leslie. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to reclaim from that wreckage. The life we shared was already ash, and I'd spent too long breathing it in, wondering if I should build from it. But no, I didn't want to rebuild on the fire. I wanted to walk away from it entirely. In the weeks that followed, I deleted the video. I deleted the messages. I even threw away the envelope of evidence Trent gave me. Not because I forgave her, and definitely not because I forgot, but because I didn't want my future shaped by the ruins of someone else's self-destruction. That chapter had been written, and for once I wasn't the one desperately trying to edit it. I started doing small things I hadn't done in years. I rejoined the local book club I quit back when Leslie said it was too dorky. I bought a new coffee maker, one with a timer, so I'd wake up to the smell of something fresh, even if I was still alone. I went to dinner with Elise and laughed more in one night than I had in a year. And slowly, painfully, but fully, I began to remember who I was before she taught me to second-guess myself. One day, While clearing out a drawer of old keys and cables and forgotten life clutter, I found our wedding photo. I stared at it for a long time. Then I smiled. Not because I missed her. Not because I felt anything at all, really. But because I finally saw it for what it was. A moment. A choice. A younger version of myself who thought love meant sacrificing your own light to keep someone else warm. That guy wasn't weak. He was hopeful. And he deserved better. I folded the photo in half, placed it in a box labeled Old Lessons, and sealed it shut. That was the day I stopped looking backward. Fast forward 6 months. New apartment. Smaller. Cozier. Mine. New friends. Ones who ask about me, not just what I can do for them. And yes, someone new. Her name's Amelia. She reads. She snorts when she laughs. And she once told me she hated the phrase, love of your life. Because love isn't a person. It's a practice. I don't know where it's going yet. I'm not rushing to define it. But when I told her about everything, about Leslie, Trent, the letter, the lies, she didn't flinch. She just listened, squeezed my hand and said, sounds like you got out just in time. And maybe I did. Maybe the joke was never that she said she'd choose someone else. Maybe the real punchline was that she thought I'd still be waiting. So here I am, not broken, not bitter, just better. Better because I finally stopped asking why she left and started asking why I let myself stay so long. Better because I stopped clinging to an identity that was tied to being someone's backup plan. Better because, in the end, her choice gave me my freedom. And that's something she will never take credit for. Thanks for staying with me through all 8 parts of this journey. If this story resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had someone lie about you to protect their own ego? Or walked away from someone who underestimated you until it was too late? Drop your story in the comments. Your voice matters. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a real confession again. You're watching Reddit Confessions, where the truth always finds its way to the surface.